is your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. The Patriotic Front criticizes the state of emergency as a recycled crime plan. ADON rep dismisses sickle threats as wage tactic. Police fatally shoot a known offender after a high-speed chase. And internationally, Coca-Cola to launch a U.S. version with real cane sugar. Now for the details. The Patriotic Front is accusing the UNC government of recycling the PNM's failed crime strategies by declaring a state of emergency. In a statement following the SOE announcement, the party called the move a copy and paste of the PNM's approach last December. While acknowledging that emergency powers may serve as a temporary circuit breaker, the Patriotic Front says without meaningful reforms, including prison oversight and anti-corruption measures, the country will continue to see fear without real progress. They reminded the public that the UNC campaigned heavily on crime and insisted citizens now expect bold action, not excuses. Industrial relations consultant Courtney McNish has dismissed sickle threats by offshore workers as an attempt to pressure ADON construction into higher wages. The workers say they face poor conditions at Parenco TT's offshore fields, including a lack of PPE. McNish insists the claims are exaggerated and that sickouts are illegal. However, documents show some workers were issued only one overall annually, contrary to his claims of more frequent distribution. Despite agreeing to meet employers on July 24th, workers say they may still protest, accusing the company of delayed tactics. A 57-year-old man, Kenneth Agard, was shot dead by police on July 18th after fleeing in a stolen car and allegedly firing at officers. The red Nissan Cedar was reported stolen earlier that night. Police spotted the vehicle in Enterprise and gave chase, which ended when Agard crashed on the Endeavour flyover. Officers say he ran off and fired at them during the pursuit, prompting them to return fire. A revolver was found near his body. Agard later died at the Chaguanas Health Facility. Internationally, Coca-Cola has confirmed it will launch a version of its classic drink made with real cane sugar in the United States this fall. The move comes after President Trump announced the shift on social media, claiming it would be a healthier and better product. While the company already uses cane sugar in some international markets and select U.S. products, most U.S. sodas are sweetened with corn syrup. Coca-Cola says this new offering will give consumers more choice amid growing demand for real sugar alternatives. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Welcome back. This is Talking Point WSN, the Content Capital, from the Sister Isle. Shawn Michael Small here. A lot to get through. The good lady herself is going to be coming in. She's going to be joining me in studio. Of course, we still have a lot of perspectives to unpack with this state of emergency and our crime situation. That said, there's a couple minor details I want to get through before we go into the in-depth discussions. Now, first of all, as expected, the state of emergency will be debated, scheduled next Monday in order to get what is the first possible extension. It's not necessarily known if it will go beyond initial extension because you have to do it within 15 days. So this is pretty understandable. The government is well positioned, if necessary, to get it for, I believe, 6 months. It'll take a second extension afterwards. But then it would need a 3/5 special majority. I can't remember what the math is on that. If the government doesn't have 3/5, they're rather close. Now, of course, anything like this we reach a point where the opposition, their response is usually quite interesting. And responses to situations like this, to some extent, that's the closest you get to what the opposition's policy agenda is. Because it's not like they actually set policy. They can only respond to the moves the government makes. And the question is, what do they oppose outright? And what do they try to compromise on? One of the things that bothered me was, technically, let's not try and rewrite history now. The UNC in opposition, for the most part, almost never compromise on anything. And they stonewall, seemingly for the sake of stonewalling, because quite often the justification for stonewalling, while not totally ridiculous or, impractical or unfeasible or unreasonable, it's still, statistically speaking, at some point, if you're being reasonable, you're not just going to outright stonewall just about everything, except for when it's time to increase your pay. Because I'm not talking about the SRC recently, I'm talking before that, when they proactively worked with the government to increase everybody's pay. Anyway, now the opposition chief whip is basically coming out and saying some things expected and some things. So Marvin Gonzalez is pointing out that this is expected. The SOE extension is expected, right? Because what's the point of calling an SOE if you're only going to have for 15 days? This is his quote: the opposition will take a very responsible decision and approach the debate on these critical issues. Our caucus will finalize our speakers. Now, to some extent, I don't necessarily like, and I know this is commonly a commonly held acceptable and responsible position for parliamentarians, but the whole idea that we will just vote on party lines blindly, like at some point, I do believe that's a problem. And in fact, when we look at the independent senators do it, we essentially use that as a sign, they're either for or against the government. So they're either siding with the government or siding with the opposition. Because how do they all unilaterally decide to go in the same direction? And I do wish that there was some amount of individual capacity by parliamentarians, because ironically, it feeds into the whole follow the leader has all the power, therefore you don't have any power, therefore our political parties are managed by dictatorship. And if we get a malevolent dictator as a political leader of a party, then you get problems. I would say who potentially will classify or qualify to be considered as such. I'll leave that for everybody else. Now, Chief Whip goes on to say, what is clear is the government has no plan. They never had one. They lied as usual when they told the country during the general election campaign that they have a plan. But we continue seeing the governance by cheap slogans and taglines like hold strain. They even told citizens there was no spike in crime, and we should be considering how much crime they prevented rather than how much is actually committed. And then, which, for the most part, I actually don't necessarily have an issue with everything in that quote. But then he's quoted to go on saying, now that they're in charge and never prepared for being in charge, it's governments by VAPs. And I'm like, it would have been a lot more effective if they just left the government by VAPs statement out. I know it speaks to a certain demographic. Don't ask me to define what it is. I'm just saying that because the point is, that's why you're going to say incendiary type things, because there's a certain, not demographic, sorry, because that's kind of saying it's one demographic of people that wants incendiary language and everybody else is more moderate in thinking. No, it's not demographic. It's just a certain cross-section of the population. Whatever your social background, economic background, geographic background is, some people like fiery language. I just think we overdo it, right? Now, is he right to say that the government has no plan? They never had one? I think it's a semantical debate. They may have had a plan. They did plan for certain things. They planned to do some of what they did, if not all of what they did with Russell, right? But to some extent, having a hard, detailed, definitive, this is what we're going to do no matter what, once we get into government type of plan, would be irresponsible because you have to actually see what's there, how much money you have, who's working out, who's not working out, what's actually effective, what's not effective, etc., etc. Which is why I appreciated the government's stance on certain things, certain decisions they made, and why I criticize others when it seemed as though they went in with a preconceived notion of what to do because of the politics that they campaigned on, which I technically can't agree with, while understanding that because they campaigned on these things, they do have to follow through with it. Did they lie when they said that they have a plan in order to solve all the problems? Maybe, maybe not. Again, if they had a general outline, but they still had to fill in the blanks, I'll accept that. There is a possibility that they just said they had a plan and had no plan. There is that possibility, right? Given that they hit the ground running with regards to dealing with the financials of the country, that could have been because they had no choice, or that could have been because they kind of figured out how they wanted to do the first 30, 100 days, right? But we don't necessarily have a lot of evidence that they did have a plan. So it does leave moderate voters and moderate members of the population kind of hanging. And then now, when he says that it's governance by cheap slogans and taglines like whole strain, the irony is with that statement is it actually makes both sides look bad, because essentially both sides have criticized each other, I believe, at this point, for saying things like whole strain, because the PNM government did similar things. So it's kind of, as far as I'm aware, unless I am mistaken, the PNM government said similar things. So I don't think it's anything but hypocritical to complain about the current government saying similar things. Likewise, the previous opposition, current government, kind of did criticize the PNM in a similar way with regards to whenever the PNM said, you know, things are going to be rough. We all have to band together, you know, break out the bicycles and the cool pot. And fine, the criticisms at the time were fine, except now you find yourself, what, having to say maybe not the exact same phrases, thank goodness, because the coal pot and the bicycle thing, that was a bit much. But the general sentiment of what you're saying is not dissimilar to what the PNM at times are saying. What's good for the goose, good for the gander? The thing about there's no spike in crime, yes, there might have been no spike in crime between May, June, July, right? Although coming down to the last couple of weeks, the violence of some murders are on a different level than, say, in May. I will agree with the chief whip in this. I don't think government prevented any crime. For the most part, they inherited a situation that was better than what it was last year. To what extent they could claim responsibility for the results of the last 2 to 3 months, well, then you need to stop passing off blame for all of the negative things in the last 2 to 3 months. But reasonable people will factor in most of the negative stuff is because of what they inherited. But you can't inherit the negative stuff from the past administration but be responsible for the positive things in the same time frame. Kind of doesn't work that way. Unless you could directly point to, well, this is a change we made now that had a positive impact now, that we can measure now and see results now. The new commissioner of police, you can't reasonably argue, turn the situation around. That is an insult and a slap in the face to the work that the entire police service and all of the hardworking officers, many of whom basically are working themselves to death. And I'm saying that literally, not figuratively. And if you want to lose the rank and file, not the rank and file of the corrupt ones and the lazy ones, but the rank and files of the ones actually holding the ship together, you know, you could continue trying to rewrite history and not understanding the indirect implications, because you're not talking about the police. But whenever you want to claim credit for things as though it's only because of everything that you've done in the last couple of months, the people actually in the public service that's been working on these areas, you know, for 6 months to a year to however long to try to improve things. The ones actually keeping the system running, they're going to feel like chopped liver. You're going to lose them. And can we afford to lose the ones actually working? So that's just a little warning with regards to, I know you want to just make it seem like it's a UNC and PNM thing, but depending on what you say, you could have a spillover effect onto people you don't want to have a spillover effect on. Yeah. Get rid of the people who aren't actually productive in the public service, but don't mess with the ones who actually are. That could spill into a whole other topic. Maybe we'll get to it before. But I want to keep on this track here. The police commissioner is warning law enforcement to be wary because of the nature of the threats apparently uncovered by intelligence that led to the state of emergency, right? The current climate, particularly because of the state of emergency and the risks that brought it on, those risks have been further increased. Officers are reminded, this is the quote, that their safety is of paramount importance and their vigilance both on and off duty must remain uncompromised. Protective protocols are being strengthened. All intelligence units remain on high alert and targeted countermeasures are being actively implemented to neutralize any emerging threats. What this tells me is, if ever there was a time to not be combative with police, now is the time, because the commissioner is informally telling them, hey, don't take any chances. And that might be interpreted in a, if I'm scared, I might need to take more harsher measures to protect myself. And I'm sure all police officers in the TTPS, maybe not all, but most are probably aware of in other countries, cops have been killed in routine traffic stops where there was no intention of any bad interaction. They were shot off the jump. And you have this current situation where targeted situations against law enforcement, prison officers have been targeted already. Some police officers have been either killed or targeted. In one case, a house was shot up. Now is not the time to want to say, I'm a man, I'm an adult, I'm a big woman, whatever. Who is you? I have my rights, and you want to act belligerent. Now is not that time. Because depending on the situation, you might make a wrong sudden move the wrong way and cause a police to draw on you. And usually those police officers are jittery. They're not necessarily, you know, accustomed to dealing with a confrontation, so they might overreact. Just warning people. There's another interesting situation, a new debate into the crime legislature has been proposed by the Minister of Homeland Security, Roger Alexander, to basically have, for illegal guns, people caught with illegal guns have no bail for 180 days. Now, this is the Homeland Security saying we have to be tough on crime. I get that. And he's speaking about kidnappers and murderers and hired killers and stuff like that. But the no bail clause that he's presenting is not about those crimes, it's about illegal guns. Now, and like I said, this is good. A man cannot be in possession of a firearm, shooting people, killing people, and that's the end of that. Well, to be fair, I would think the no bail would be more effective if it's pointed towards the shooting and killing, not just the possession. Because again, one of the things the TTPS warns is, don't be the family member, don't be the auntie or the uncle or the brother or the sister or the parents, right? And there's an illegal gun in your house, and you might have an idea that it's there, or you have an idea that your child or your nephew or your friend or your brother or your sister has something that they should not have in your house. And then end up, the police find out, raid you, you get charged. Now, should people like that get no bail? I don't know, because you have to kind of prove what their relation is with the criminal activity. We have to prove that either they're the gang member or an active member of the criminal enterprise, or they're just an unwitting accomplice that should have known better in the sense of, hey, don't bring nothing to my house. But they were complacent and got caught in a bad situation. My thing is this though, I don't know what 180 days will solve, to be honest. Unless you're telling me that the court proceedings could go ahead in more or less 180 days, what's the point of having no bail for 180 days? Depending on the crimes involved, the trial might take longer than 180 days to conclude. So what's going to happen if he's still in court facing charges, 180 days is over, then what? Right? So no bail for 180 days once you're convicted, 25 to life. All right, that last part, for an illegal gun, I mean, if it's murder, sure, right? And this is a good piece of reporting here by the Guardian reporter, senior reporter Jensen Lavende. I probably butchered his name. I very much apologize, but I wanted to try to give you credit for this piece of writing because he points out that this current stance by the Minister of Homeland Security doesn't contrast very well to the UNC's position on similar legislation when they were in opposition. So where is the principles when now speaking on issues like this? Because principles don't change just because, oh, I'm in government now, so now I can have different principles. We can't let the PNM have no bail for criminals. But now that we in government, we can have no bail. Right? And he's pointed to the anti-gang legislation, which is linked to the UNC, right? Which it piloted in 2011, as he also points out, and the bail amendment bill in 2022. So the anti-gang legislation in 2020, which originated with the People's Partnership in 2011, but also the bail amendment extension of duration bill 2022, right? So they oppose these things. They oppose any sort of laws that would have dealt with a similar no bail situation. But they supported the amendment to the bail bill, which allowed murder accused to be granted bail. Now, to be fair, and maybe this is part of the, I don't know if this is intentional or not, the Minister of Homeland Security wasn't part of the opposition bench at the time. But the leader is the leader, and this is one of the side effects of concentrating power in yourself. You're going to have a hard time convincing anyone else that major policy decisions were not coming, at least from or through you, and therefore you can't say, well, that is a different UNC to this UNC. It is technically, because, you know, the AG, the Minister of Economic Development, all of those people are new to, they're not really UNC people. The Minister of Homeland Security, he joined the party for the general election, but at the same time, there are still a lot of stalwarts of UNC in major positions in cabinet, like the one or two, or the one who is aggravating and upsetting everybody. So to what extent now, what's the reconciliation for this? Otherwise, it looks as though this is not so much of a, oh, we have a new idea and this is what we should be doing. Well, to some extent, the PNM did want to do this. And it's interesting that you're willing to do it now. And the unfortunate implication of that is you played politics with national security. So now that this happens, now we have to ask ourselves, to what extent do we believe the current government when they say it's all the PNM's fault and we're going to fix it, when you're basically touching on ground the PNM wanted to tread on, but you didn't allow them to do so? It's almost like if, when thinking about political strategy, nobody in the UNC thought long term. I'm not too sure if the good lady is here, so I'll just jump to one last topic. And speaking about not thinking things out long term, remember I said that the interests of unions and the interests of the state they're not always going to be aligned, right? And then, of course, the interest of state and the interest of the government majority party is technically also not always going to be aligned. And the interest of that government majority party and the interest of the unions is also not always going to be aligned. So the whole partnership now, the coalition of interests between political parties, but also including unions, which technically are not supposed to be involved in politics to begin with. But hey, it's not like you had union leaders on the campaign trail campaigning for political parties. I wonder what their constitution says about those things. But anyway, now our union is basically in a war of words with Minister of Public Utilities, I believe it's Public Utilities, Barry Padrath, because the Communication Workers Union is essentially saying what happened to the resignation for TSTT CEO was political interference, right? So they said that the TSTT CEO was set to replace. Minister Padrath said there was no truth to the union's claims, and then the CEO resigned. But the CWU, the Communicators Workers Union Secretary General, is saying that instead of firing him, right, they were trying to maintain the optics. So they gave him a golden handshake or a golden parachute or some kind of terms. And now he wasn't fired, but he resigned because he probably was told, hey, one way or the other, you're not going to be here in the long run. So you could either take these terms, we could shake hands and be amicable and we could have our good press, or we'll have the bad press, but we'll get what we want. So now the CWU, they are concerned with regards to workers who may be either deemed or termed as PNM supporters, PNM members, or people, employees of the CEO. And essentially, they looked at what happened at WASA and what happened at CPEP and what happened at URP and what happened at the state boards, you know, and they looked at the fact that when UNC win, UNC people winning first in certain areas, and now there's a union. Let's not forget that the minister, I can't remember if it's the minister in the Ministry of Public Utilities, I can't remember what Clyde Elder's position is. Which ministry is he under? Yeah, minister in the Ministry of Public Utilities. The junior minister is the former head of the union that is now essentially disputing the claims by the senior minister in that portfolio. Although I would argue, I don't know how you could have Clyde Elder as minister in the ministry and Barry Padrath as the minister. It is what it is, right? That said, I mean, there is a bit of a, for lack of a better word, conflict of interest. I'm kind of trying to be quick here to wrap things up fast, but that's probably not the best way to put it. But we have a union now. They're not hinting at things. It's not the labor minister just hinting at lamentations of what's going on with workers, right? It's not the PSA and the OWTU hinting that they're still hoping for the 10%. No. The CW is basically outright saying what happened to the CEO, which technically, unless I'm wrong, the CEO is not actually covered by the union. In fact, usually the CEO is one of the people that the union is fighting against, right? We want the money. CEO's like, no, we need money for other things. They have decided that this situation that happened to the CEO is bad enough that they need to publicly complain about it. It's almost like if someone in the UNC didn't think about the long-term implications of what they're doing. And let's be frank, and I'll close with this, and Karen will get more into this particularly with the staple things when she comes on. Doesn't this look like the very same things that the PNM was doing? And when the UNC complained about it, everyone was like, yes, that's wrong. Are we going to pretend that it's okay now? Because if we just wanted a facelift, but more or less the same thing, just a different version, what's the point? What's the point of all of the, oh, there was such relief after the election, and oh, when everybody win. And the sad part is, this is how a failed administration will lose an election and then come back. Because the person that promised to be better is showing signs. They haven't disproven themselves fully yet, but they're showing signs that they can't actually be better, or they don't want to be better. At least some of them. At least some of them. Because the results, there's no way to spin the results as positive. I want to see how long it'll take for the other unions to try to hold strain on the coalition of interest. Notice we don't really hear nothing about the coalition of interest anymore. And we don't necessarily hear much of the 10% anymore. Don't worry, we'll find the money. Yeah, we don't hear that much of that anymore either. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, the good ladies here. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN show. Michael Small. We'll be right back after this.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
And we're back here and talking about the Content Capital, WESN. And joining me is the good lady herself, someone who has a bit of experience of the time before the current political status quo. You know, she was the Minister of Finance just before we got into this current political back and forth. And of course, I'm speaking of Karen Neshishera. Karen, good morning. It's weird for me to say welcome back because I'm in Tobago and you're in studio.
Correct. And the reason we discussed that yesterday, I'm sure the viewers by now know that we do have a very good relationship professionally, and we discussed things beforehand. And so one of the things I said to Sean, I think I need to come in the studio because a lot of the references I will be making will come from articles, and I can't do that at home using my computer because I won't be able to do it. So that's the real reason I'm in studio, and I'm missing Sean at my, on my left. So can I start? Yeah?
Well, yes.
When you start, lead into it. You know what I'm going to start with?
Yeah, you wanted to start with state board appointment, so it segues
Yes.
well into what I was saying just
Yes.
before we took the break. And I did say you wanted to get further into this because this is something you're passionate about, and to some extent, we might get, and I think this is true, we might get lost in the blaming the PNM, but we have the situation of, right, but what's actually happening right now with the boards right now, regardless of what was done in the past?
Yes, yes. Actually, I was coming to talk about, with the state of emergency, some of the proposals, some of which you have heard already, but you know, they are worth repeating. I learned from the international media houses that they can carry a story a little too far, but sometimes repetition can be good. So I want to start with the board appointment because it is very troubling. So I'll start first with making, the opening comment I will make is that because the PNM, according to what has been said, appointed mostly boards with a certain ethnic composition, Afro-Trinidadians. So what are you complaining about? But are you going to use that as your standard? So are we back to tit for tat? Are we back in a holding position where the politics of this country cannot move forward? Because I think that's why people voted this government in. Because when you said, when we win, all of us win, people understood that to mean that you had had an inclusive government. And I just want to say for the record, I have not lost confidence in the Prime Minister, but I will say that something is not right in terms of how it is being ruled out. And it's not a question of perception and people beating you up for talking the truth. You have to speak the truth. And if people want to say you're being divisive, we're not being divisive, we are pointing out the divisiveness. And my starting position is this. You sold us a dream. You did. You sold us a dream of inclusiveness. That is why you were able to win to a large extent. Because people believed that we were seeing a dawn of a new era. I've had people close to me congratulating that and being so happy that, oh gosh, you know, at last Trinidad and Tobago is moving back from the tit for tat, you did this, you did that. So for anybody who is on the current government supporting them feverishly to use that argument, then you are really playing into the whole playbook of tit for tat, we're not moving, we're staying in square one. Okay, so it's not helping you to come and say that at all. And before I go into actual exams, because the best way, you know, in law, and they have a lot of lawyers in the parliament, they're all familiar with this evidential rule called res ipsa loquitur. All it means is the facts speak for themselves. I think I've used that example before many years ago. So you're walking down the highway, well, on the side, and your back is turned to the traffic, and you're walking on the side thing, and all of a sudden you end up in the ditch with a car, and you in the ditch. You didn't see the car swerving off from the highway. You didn't see the car go in to hit you, but you know that there had to be negligence for that to happen. So that means that the facts speak for themselves. So that's why I'm saying the facts speak for themselves. And before I go on to look at examples, I'm not going to just read out the imbalance, the clear imbalance. I'm going to let you tell me if you don't see something is wrong. And by the way, for Rowley, of all people, Dr. Rowley, of all people, to come and want to reprimand publicly Gonzalez. I'm not saying how Gonzalez went about it was right. No, I'm not saying that. But you are in no position to do that. You, the man of how to cut a lawn, so when you have a wife, and this is how to cut the lawn, you who talk about buying underwear for your wife, you who talk about, I don't want she cat, not cat, cat. That's how you said it, nasty and vulgar. You are the one who say you use your boots for, like, nearly every reference you made had a sexual connotation of the most vulgar kind. So if you are supposed to teach anybody, the only person who seems to have learned from you is Stuart Young with Zami. right? So don't you come and lecture. You are in no position to lecture anybody and pretend, oh, taking the high road and in elegant language. You, of all people, please, don't, who do you think you're fooling? Just yourself, you know. You look like you're wearing the emperor with no clothes on, you know. Or you've surrounded yourself with yes men, because I am telling you, people have not forgotten, and the results of the election say that. And in fact, in all the polls, even when the PNM seemed to be ahead, one person who was always ahead of you was Kamala Persad-Bissessar. So don't put yourself in it now. Don't try to be in the news, especially in something like that. Trying to pull down, but you know what it shows? At least for me, it shows that you obviously do not have a good relationship with some of them, including Gonzalez, and you saw it as an opportunity to dress him down in public. You, of all people, no, you're not in a position to do that. I'm sorry. So I will say why it is that I started looking. And I'll let you be the judge, and please call in. Please call in on both sides. Please call in. We shouldn't have both sides. We should have one side. And we know that there are many state boards. Someone said that to me. Said, well, you don't know what they're going to do. They got course correct, and a lot of other boards will be appointed. Come on, people. You very well know. No disrespect. No disrespect. But unless you're a farmer or you're going into agribusiness, being on the cocoa board is not the same thing as being on NGC board. It's not the same thing as being on NIPDEC board. It's not the same thing as being on NIB board. It's not the same thing as being on TTS-TT board. We all know that. So if you want to play that all boards are equal, we know that in reality is not true. So let's look at some of the board appointments. And I'm going to read it out. So let the facts speak for themselves. You judge. You judge. And if I mispronounce any words, I'm sorry. Some French words I cannot pronounce. Some Dutch words I cannot pronounce. I can pronounce a lot of East Indian names, not all of them. And if I do, please, I take my apology. Some of them are easy. So let's start with NIPDEC. Ronald, the chairman, every single chairman, you will notice a trend. Chairman, Ronald Ramcharan. Members, Hamlin Jailal, Melissa Bart-Smith, Krishmani Mizir, Navindra Rananan, Ravi Ramutar, and Dwight Scott. 5 out of 7. And I don't include permanent secretaries because they are not political appointees. WASA board, chairman, Roshan Babwa. Members, Mr. Hoyt, I didn't get his first name, Tota Maraj, Chaitram Brown, Kern Sani, Naveen Maraj, Indira Mohammed, Patricia Henry. 6 out of 8 have East Indian names. TNTEC, the chairman, Anil Kamal. Then you have Raymond Koze, Ravita Babwa, Gavin Gurbani, Bipat, Curtis Boudou, Dana Mahesi, Roshan Tota Maraj, Taramati Mongru, Jared Small. 7 out of 9 have East Indian names. Caribbean Airline, the chairman, Renu, I think Kaulasar, Videsh Prime, Selwyn Kajo, Amrit Krishna Mahabir, Charlene Maraj, Adam Moss. Then we have MTS board, Adrian Barra, Mitchell Ramcharan, Natasha Baka, Terry Ram, Sunil Babulal, Daniel Nanku, Karim Baird, Rodriguez Martinez, and Nigel Moses. Then we have the NIB board. We have, and so I'm not including the as I said, I'm not including the permanent secretaries or ministers in that because they are not political appointees. We have Leroy Batiste, Ravi Ratiram, N. Chaitan Maraj, Anna Roberts, Prakash Prasad, and then we have Paria, Nairi Alfonso of FCB fame, Geeta Raghunath, Christopher Jackman, Kent Ramlal. Then we have the NGC board, Nazim Sajad, Ramprasad Motilal, Dr. Ahmed Khan, Siv Sitahal, Rohini Ramlal Peters, Professor David Alexander, Joseph Tony. 5 out of 7 have East Indian names. I think this is the Heritage Board. Chairman Kurt Ramlal, Khalid Hassan Ali, Ronnie Suku, Richard Hansraj, Lincoln Dukran, Kamini Ramraj, and that's it, 6 out of 6 of East Indian names. Heritage, Chairman Gautam Maharaj. By the way, the Heritage, the chairman was Kurt Ramlal. Marissa Ramsundar, Raymond Surajbali. And then we have Paria. Oh, I think I just did Paria. And then I had some that I hadn't. MTS was one of them, yeah. MTS, I don't think I mentioned it. MTS, Adrian Barra, Mitchell Ramcharan, Natasha Bechan, Terry Ram, Sunil Babulal, Daniel Nanku, Kareem Baird, Rodriguez Martinez, Nigel Moses. And then I had this, someone had sent me the National Gas Company, which is what I did just now, but the Port Authority, 9 people named, only 2 with non-East Indian names. I'm going to put it that way. Heritage, well, I did that out, 6 out of 6. Eastern Regional Health Authority, 7 people named, only 2 with non-East Indian names. Southwest Regional Authority, 9 people, 3 only with non-East Indian names. HDC, 7 persons, all are East Indian names. Let me put it that way. Yeah? And NCC, well, I don't know, they put Kanai, I guess. I don't know, I don't want to talk too much about that one. Well, you see a pattern? You see a pattern? Are you going to tell me that that is not a pattern? And the only one that did not reflect that, apparently, is the FCB, because FCB is publicly traded, it's not just state-owned. All these companies are state-owned. So the corporation sold and the cabinet appoint them. Of course, with the Prime Minister giving her, a green tit. But FCB is traded, remember the IPO, the whole scandal with the IPO? Remember that? And the chairman had to be removed, remember that? I'm sure you do. But she's now on Paria board. And in that case, they had an AGM on April the 8th before elections, so you will not see that kind of makeup. So what does one conclude from that? When we win, all we win. Who is all are we? Who is all are we? Because I ain't seen it there. I ain't not seen it. And don't tell me about how many boards you're going to think. We all know. I was in government. We all know. I say it too many times, but that's only because I underscore the point. You ask certain people to sit on boards. They expect you will offer them unit trust, NGC, NIB, NIPDEC, because those are the boards that are perceived to be the boards with power, and energy boards are perceived to be the ones you want to sit on. So let us get it, let's be real. So either you didn't really mean what you said, 2, you don't have confidence in anybody who does not represent has an Indian name, because you don't have confidence in those people either, because you think they're not going to carry out your policies, which is a sad reflection because they certainly voted for you. 3, which is just as bad, you don't think they must be dons. They must be dons. Because the only reason you don't want them there is because they're not so smart, and we need to put smart people there, and so they're done, so we have to move them off. That's 3. And the 4th thing is, it was just a sham. It was just a sham. And if somebody tells me I am being divisive, I am not being divisive. I am speaking to the divisiveness. I did not bake these board appointments. And if other people are afraid to say something, I am going to say it. Not because I do still believe in the Prime Minister. I do. But you got to do something about this, just of course correct, because this is a bad, bad look. And anybody with any sense are sitting out in their living rooms, in their bedrooms, in their wherever, in their gatherings, and muttering and speaking about what I just spoke about. And so if you brought, and you know what is the key thing? I'm going to finish on that point. You know what? When people tell me they did it, so we did it. But that's not what you told us. That's why we voted for you, because we thought it was the end of that. And if those board appointments, which are state board appointments, are any indication of what you intend for Trinidad and Tobago, we are still even with your ministerial appointments, the state board appointments is when now you're carrying through your policies of your government. And if that's any indication of what we have coming down the pipeline, then we are right back at stage 1. That's what I
would just like to add, there was a 5th potential reason, Karen, in that if there's the assumption that professionals in those fields of basically the other majority race of the country are viewed as PNM people, that assumption is made as opposed to actually looking into the situation, which I am saying it's a possibility that I want to discount or I want to discredit, because the cabinet included people with a PNM background. And the Prime Minister herself said, it doesn't matter what your political background is. If you want to work and do good work, we'll work with you. You work with us, you'll be accepted. So I just wanted to say, people might be discriminated for their perceived political history, right? They don't actually have to be political members now. But that might have happened. As much as the Prime Minister said, we're not going to be playing that, as you rightfully said, Karen, we're not going to play those usual politics. Let's say it's not race. Let's say it's political. Well, I can't buy that either.
That's true.
Because you did it. You had such a diverse cabinet, right? Both racially and politically.
True.
With former PNM members. But we're not seeing that played out at the state board level to the same extent. So where's the disconnect? Why is it there?
And it's too glaring, you see, you can't ignore it, you know, it's just too glaring. And I think this is not, this is because, my bringing it up, initially I didn't want to speak to it, you know, but then it became too glaring. You know, it became too glaring. And I said, you know, I just can't, this is, they're in 3 months now, they need to take a hard look at themselves. I don't know, you know, sometimes I don't know if people surround themselves with yes men, people surround themselves with people who tell them, yeah, you're doing a great job, don't worry with them, we're doing good. The polls saying this, the polls saying that. But that's what the PNM said too, and look what happened. We don't want, I mean, we want to give you a chance. We want to see you succeed. We do want to see you succeed. I want to see you succeed. But if this is any indication of what we have coming down the pipeline, you just have done a grievous self-inflicted wound to yourself by appointing state boards that are glaringly does not represent the ethnic composition of Trinidad and Tobago, which is the main political, beside issues of social ranking, wealth, economic inequality. All those are important, but the one that is the most glaring and the most challenging is one that is based on ethnicity. And for you then to have the opportunity to continue what you had said by your board appointments, to lose that opportunity is nothing you can say now, Madam Prime Minister, or that can soften the blow, that people are not foolish, people are far more educated. There are social media platforms, people are looking at it and whispering and talking about it. So please course correct before it is too late, because that is not what you sold to us and what we bought.
I just want to say this for the young people who might be listening on this topic so that they could understand. Show me it's we time now without, tell me it's we time now without telling me it's we time now. That's basically what this is.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're not going to say it, but
yes,
your actions are kind of saying it. Now, with that said,
yeah, I
want to get to the next topic because something big happened after your last appearance last week on Friday. We got hit with, I mean, just how it was told to us was rather interesting, because it didn't come with the press conference and the announcement by the Prime Minister and the political leadership. It came first by a press release. Then we got press conferences, first the Commissioner of Police and I believe the AG after that, announcing a state of emergency. The second one in just about a little over 6 or 7 months.
Yeah.
The second one in about 7 months, right? Second one for the year, basically. Not something anyone expected, because literally the day before, the Minister of Homeland Security spoke about there was no surge in crime and kind of everything was going okay. And then that night, apparently, they got the ball rolling and implemented the state of emergency more or less in the wee hours of the morning, to tell us by press release around 8 a.m. And what's your thoughts on the state of emergency, on this state of emergency?
Well, you know, I'm not going to believe, but that one point too much, because I think a lot has been said. It was clearly strange to first have your Commissioner of Police, and then subsequently you had the AG, and then you had the Prime Minister issuing a written statement. So, I mean, I think people looked at it didn't seem right, but I think the greater point here is that I think David Abdullah did a very good commentary on that, and it comes like ho-hum, another one, you know, it's losing, it's cutting, it's becoming normalized, and so is it being effective? And then why do you have to have states of emergency if you have been able to or are working towards creating a safer Trinidad and Tobago by using the tools that are already at your disposal. Because as far as that state of emergency is concerned, as I understood it, it is directed at the gangs, and it is directed at most gangs and these cells that operate within the prison and outside the prison, organized crime, that want to destabilize the country. But and so suspending the Section 4 rights by allowing searches and a number of activities that usually the police will not be able to do without getting warrants and so on. But I'm not sure that we've seen, I think maybe something is going on, but obviously it's not good for foreign investment at all, because if I was a foreign investor and I seen this country having state of emergency after state of emergency, among other issues, I'm not coming here. I'm not coming here. Why am I coming here? Why am I coming to a country that obviously, if you're doing that, there's a lot of instability that's under the surface, and that they clearly their general policing is not able to deal with it. That's the message, unfortunately, that is given. So I'm not going to prejudge the Commissioner of Police. I really do feel, until otherwise proven, that I do believe that there is a commitment by this government to deal with organized crime and to deal with the cocaine transshipment. And I think their collaborative relationship with the United States is good for us, and and I think that is a good message for Trinidad and Tobago. So what I decided to do was first to look and see what are the prescriptions. I know I've spoken about some of them, but the state of emergency really brought it back into play, and I'm quite not understanding why a lot of these measures are not being put in. Maybe they are going to be. So the first thing this is a report. Now, this is a report because I want to say the source of the report, because the source is always important. So this is a report from the United Nations, anyway, it's at the beginning of their document. United Nations, Lord. I've tried to get exactly where we started with Trinidad. So if I go back to the beginning of the document, anyway, it's from the United Nations, UDOC or UNOC. And they looked at Trinidad and Tobago case study. So let's hear what they had to say. They said you can start from page 35 of the document, and it was published last year, July 2024. So it's a recent vintage, it's not an old document. All right, it said that Trinidad and Tobago serves as a major transit point for cocaine and cannabis in the Eastern Caribbean. The country has long been affected by drug transshipment and trafficking and high rates of violent crime. For one, Trinidad and Tobago considered a strategic location by organized crime networks due to its location. The southern tip of the island is just 11 kilometers away from Venezuela. The country's physical proximity to Venezuela and the fact that it's outside the hurricane belt allows for year-round trafficking. What is more, strong cultural ties in South Trinidad with Venezuela have ensured that the coastal regions, including the Caracas, Citrus, and Moruga, are sites of extensive trafficking of drugs, guns, and migrants. And they say mainly it comes from Venezuela, it comes by commercial freight, it comes by fast boats, it comes by fishing vessels. And they said that there's been, we obviously do, and they say redistribution takes place in offshore ports and warehouses. In any event, what they're saying is that we do have a serious problem with drugs and organized crime. And they said that a string of reported drug seizures starting in 2023 suggests that the drug economy is thriving. And they gave examples, which I won't go into. And then they talked to the weapons. They spoke about the weapons. They say for Trinidad and Tobago, some of the handguns are coming from Venezuela, but most of them are, which the Venezuelans traffic with guns for food. That's what they're saying. This is a report that is saying that. And it's saying that the most weapons are procured illegally in the United States, including Florida, Georgia, New York, and Texas, and shipped directly to Trinidad or via Puerto Rico. And they talk about the large seaports and the assault rifles and so on and so on. So we know that that is a big issue. So, and they also said this, the Venezuelan gangs in Trinidad and Tobago. I want you to listen to this, Trinidad and Tobago is on page 39. It's in a box 2, Venezuelan gangs in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago currently register the highest, you hear the word? highest per capita number of Venezuelan migrants in the world. You heard that? So when are we talking about why they have so many Venezuelans in Trinidad? You heard in the world, highest per capita number. It has received at least 60,000 Venezuelan migrants since 2015. However, the government officially acknowledged existence beginning in 2019. Since then, the national authorities have introduced restrictions on migrant registration, and they've sent to 112, and they've registered 16,523. In any event, there is concern because what they're saying, the capture of a high-level gang member in 2019 set off alarm bells. Authorities arrested Darwin El Culon Garcia Kibori, the leader of the Evander gang, along with 7 other Venezuelans and a Trinidadian fisherman in Point23 in southern Trinidad. The gang is involved in both extortion of boats carrying Venezuelan migrants as well as ferrying drugs and arms. Evander, also known as the Altano Liberation Front, is a comparatively large gang that has been involved in violence in Trinidad. It comes from the Venezuelan state of Delta Amacuro, where it controls part of the local criminal markets at a key port. In 2019, the group's leader was killed by the Venezuelan police. The gang reportedly has over 650 members and was involved in the killing of 3 Venezuelans in Trinidad. Gang members reportedly transit the country illegally, seeking construction jobs while engaging in drug and arms selling. Now, that I want to say this. You don't know that? You don't know that? This is what gets me so upset, and I won't call the groups, the Christian groups in this country. I wonder if these people came from Haiti, you would be so willing to help them and put them in schools. Huh? Don't you understand? They're bringing we are too small for that. We are too small. Nothing is wrong with helping persons who are in need, but something is wrong with you importing the probably major problem of crime in this country, which is organized crime, into this country to the extent to which now you are trying to make it legitimize their presence. This is not right. And you have to ask yourself, why would a government allow that? Not this government, because they now came in. Right? So I can't put it on their hands. But what do you say to that? Why are we allowing that? I am not making that up. I didn't say that. Karen Tisher didn't say that. I got it from that report on crime and gangs, July 2024, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. And that's the name of the document. And it talks about crime and guns, and it's dated July 2024. That's just last year. Right? So, and what are we allowing that for in this country? And then we talk about the money laundering and white-collar crime and organized crime. And I looked up to see, this is why I brought my computer, because I didn't want to say that I am making these comments. I looked to see if there was a relationship between drugs, the white-collar crime, as well as organized crime. And there's actually a report in one of the newspapers dating back to 2013, trying to look for it, where they gave extensive, and they actually did some research on it, and they actually showed that, let's see where I'm getting it now. The United States, right, they talked about, is money laundering part of white-collar crime? And I think there was an article they said money laundering can be classified both as a white-collar crime and an activity associated with organized crime. While it is often committed by individuals or business settings, it also plays a crucial role in the operation of organized crime. Because what you have to do, you have to conceal. And organized crime, money laundering, is a vital component of organized crime, allowing criminals to legitimize profits from illegal activities like drug trafficking and dealing and other criminal enterprises. And it says money laundering can be both a standalone white-collar crime and a key function with large organized crime networks. So what am I saying to you? Actually, there was the article, I was looking for the article which said that, that said that money laundering and organized crime is the source of violent crime in Trinidad and Tobago. It was a newspaper article by a well-respected newspaper, and it was done in 2013, and they did a study. So it wasn't just an opinion, but they actually looked at They actually looked at examples to show that there was a correlation between so-called white-collar crime and organized crime. And I'm still not able to pick it up. Maybe I took it off by accident. And I'm sorry that I did, because it was a very good article. And it went into detail on why it is they're both interconnected. Oh yes, look, I got it. It says white-collar crime is violent crime. That's what it says. And it's a daily newspaper that's well respected. And what it said, firstly, the white-collar crime is not a stereotypically represented, a standard type of crime offender who's mostly a first-time wrongdoer who suffered one-time moral lapse and is involved in non-violent crime. Rather, white-collar criminals are a diverse group, not limited to one economic class, and whose crimes are rarely victimless. But what they have said, in the field of offender profiling, the FBI Behavioral Science Unit looked at the characteristics, and this is, they said, so two central misconceptions about white-collar crime are that there are people with a quite distinct different behavior to violent street-level crime. Those items do not fit the modern framework. White-collar criminals play an important role because, let's see what they said. They said that the purposely deceiving rely on a perception of criminality as stemming from the street criminals who supposedly are uneducated, rude, ill-mannered, and unstable. This has the effect of making white-collar criminals invisible, even when she is standing right in front of you being fraudulent. But they really said that it does lead to, it's a subset of criminals who commit murders to prevent their crimes from being discovered. So the whole notion that white-collar crime is not a violent crime, and that includes specifically money laundering, is not true. So what are the things that we can do about that? Well, I said I'd come today and talk about some prescriptions. And one of them is the DPP, which I mentioned already in an article which is on Stand Your Ground, showing the level of the lack of positions, including HR, unless they change it in the last 2 months or so, but there's seriously under a lack of attorneys, on the permanent attorneys working in the DPP. The DPP is your prosecutorial arm of the state. You do not do a private prosecution unless you get permission from that same DPP to do a private prosecution. The state prosecutes all crimes. And if the DPP is under-resourced and does not have enough staffing, clearly they are not able to monitor and manage the several courts all over Trinidad and Tobago because of the sheer workload and the preparation that goes into preparing a case where the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. So you have to understand, if you're really serious about dealing with crime in this country, I'm not saying the SOE doesn't have a place, although, as Abdullah said, he says, what are you going to do when the SOE comes in? It's just going to start back up again. So it's just putting a plaster on a sore. You have to get rid of the sore, right? So one of the things you need to do also, another thing, is a serious fraud office. Now that was something Hope, the party Hope, that's gone, sort of dismantled, I have to say. The party Hope had advocated, and it came from United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has a serious fraud office, and it deals with white-collar crime, money laundering, serious fraud cases. But what is the difference with it? It comes under the umbrella of the Attorney General office, as does the DPP, although he is politically insulated by Section 110, I think, of the Constitution, as the former Attorney General found out to his dismay. So he's politically insulated, but they fall under the AG's office. And the Serious Fraud Crime Office, which is one of the major crime-fighting units in the United Kingdom to deal with serious fraud and money laundering, the difference between that, and I'm advocating for that here, is that, and we were looking at that, is to have the unit ring-fence, but be both an investigative and a prosecutorial body. In other words, you're not just letting the police, they're working hand in hand to collect the evidence that is necessary in order to carry through a prosecution. These are people who are going to be very highly trained in anti-money laundering. They've been highly trained in knowing where to find it, how to find it, what to look for, and therefore they're working in tandem with each other to uncover the issue of money laundering. Because money laundering, we saw from the FIU, $6.8 billion, according to them, in suspicious transactions. Taxes, we found out that over 10 billion hemorrhaging because people are not evading, not avoiding taxes, which is legal. We also found out when I looked at ease of doing business, we ranked 160 out of 190 countries. And the number one thing that they pointed out, the tax regime is not being enforced. And you might think, what is the tax regime? Well, ask, what's his name? That man that went to jail, they couldn't get it for anything else in America. You remember that? It's before my time too, you know. So,
Capone?
Capone, Al Capone. They couldn't get Al Capone for anything else. They got him for tax evasion, right? Because they knew it wasn't tax evasion. They knew it was more than that.
We have a caller, but I do want to say also, Capone is a good example of why you're saying you have to go after the money, right? Because in the case of Capone, a lot of money and alcohol, a lot of money and power. When the money was taken away, you got a very sudden shift in the fortunes of criminal enterprise once bootlegging was no longer a thing, prohibition was no longer a thing. Now, it's not so simple with drugs, but again, it goes back to, yes, we legalizing cocaine is not something that we could just do, you know, not without a lot of thought and a lot of consideration. That's going to take time. But going after the money is something we can do right now, and that's what you're saying, and that's why it's important. Now, with that said, I don't know if you have any more points to make, Karen, but we do have to go.
Let him know. Go ahead. It's good. I like the persons give their point.
Right. So we'll take the call and continue the discussion.
Yeah, I think so. We'll be organic with this discussion.
Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good morning. Good morning. I hope you all can hear me. Good morning, former Minister of Finance, Karen Nunes Teixeira. A quick question to Karen. As once the corporation sold, can a board get involved in spending $1.4 billion without the corporation's sole approval / Minister of Finance? The second issue, I agree with you with the board composition and the ethnic bias. And that was vividly shown at the recent COP Guerrero press conference on the SOE. If you look at the leadership table of the police service executive, that can be credible evidence to corroborate what you're saying. And the third issue, the watch list. I, as a citizen, want to know if it was might have been a recent addition to the watch list, the fact that the former Prime Minister was no longer the Prime Minister. And more importantly, I'm going to juxtapose that to the shutting down of Petrotin. Was it to help Maduro do his business with CARICOM leaders? And there is a nice calypso that Chuck does sang, Three Blind Men. Listen to that calypso, listen to what you were saying about Eric Williams, and listen to what he had to say about CARICOM leaders not wanting to buy Trinidad oil. Is that an extension of that? And is that a couple of people who have been spreading the relationship, going 39 times to Venezuela and not telling us what they're going? The Americans bound to have information. Guerrero will have intelligence and he will have interception phone calls, but the Americans and the British, and don't forget the indemnity issue, where we can possibly allegedly conspire to defraud the UK government on taxpayers from Casey Nelson. I'm going to have a nice morning.
But you made so many points. Okay, let me just say, if you have a call, I'll not say anything. You have a call?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I'll go through very quickly. When it comes to appointments, the board, yes, the corporation sold you know, represents the government in terms of that. But it's not made by corporations, so I can assure you, it's made by the cabinet, and the head of the cabinet will really be the one that will be most persuasive, and by whom they are persuaded by. Because every cabinet will have, it's just so, they have persons that they rely more on, have more confidence in, and so they will have a lot of influence. So that deals with the board appointments. With regard to the point with, what was you made about 3 or 4 points. The last point, but I don't know about the Trinidad closing down Petrotrin, but I do know there was a time when we had, under Mr. Manning's time, we had a special window that allowed Caribbean persons to access money for development purposes. And, you know, it was in order to offset the impact of the Venezuela, who had put in place a rate which every government except Barbados and Trinidad signed up to, which allowed them to access oil and fuel at very low prices and also very low interest rates. So they all went running to that. By the way, ironically, one of them that did, and who I like very much, is Dr. Gonzalez. He has always said the first $100 million US that he got to build his airport in the new airport in St. Vincent came from Trinidad, from that petroleum fund that Mr. Manning had set up. And he actually has a picture of Mr. Manning. I don't know if they took it down, but as far as I know, it's still there in the lobby, thanking him for what he did. So yes, there was this tension between Trinidad and Venezuela, trying to create their own area of interest, not only in the Caribbean, but also in Latin America. And that was seen as one of the ways that they were doing that, with Haiti, with all the Caribbean countries, and most of them went that way. So that answers that.
We have a caller now.
Okay.
We got a caller, Karen, from Arima. So we'll take the call. Good morning, caller. You on here?
Morning. Michael Small and Mrs. Nunes Sheriff. Morning, you all hear me?
Yes, morning. Good morning. Yes, sir.
Right. So recent events overnight has proven that Dr. Rowley was on a watch list. Firstly, the Antiguan Minister of Legal Affairs, I believe, saying that their government has no comment, but it's unfortunate. Secondly, Gary Griffith telling you yesterday that with Interpol, you have red flags and they have notices.
Yeah.
And with the notice, they don't necessarily have to inform the government of your country that person X or person Y is on the notice. But to add credence to the argument, as what Ms. Nunes Shera was saying there, that answers the point of why the former PM would find himself on such a list.
Oh, gosh.
Because when you look at it, look at the number of Venezuelans that come into our country. That report saying over 60,000. We have the highest per capita in the world or something like that.
That's correct. That's what the report said.
Secondly, who was dancing in the conga line? Sean Michael Small, was it you and Mr. Maduro dancing in the conga line? Didn't the President of the United States put that same Mr. Maduro on some kind of list and put a bounty on his head? So what it is we expect to see, this is not Dolly House, this is people's lives we're playing with here. And as I told you yesterday, if we really get the borders under control to control the amount of ammunition and arms that come in our country, we'll get a serious pull on crack.
Correct.
But all we're seeing here is exchange. And UNC trying to trump and follow suit. So what they had previously said they're not supporting, now they're coming to do it.
Okay,
tell them miss us with that, please.
Okay, let me just say
because
two things.
all who's saying that they win by this landslide and landslide.
Okay.
They only gained 30,000 votes.
Okay, but
Makila Pandey got 20,000.
Right.
PNM lost 100,000.
Right, and that is the key
So
thing.
it's not to say the whole population was in agreement with them. It's just that their supporters voted for them and PNM supporters didn't vote for them.
Okay.
And we have good reason why we didn't vote for them.
Right. So it
because
amounts
of
to
that
the same
same nonsense that Dr. Rowley is getting on with. So what does he expect? Have a good day.
Yeah, sorry to
Thank
cut
you.
you a little bit, because I just wanted to say, whether they voted or they didn't vote, it was just as bad. People couldn't bring themselves, maybe they didn't trust the UNC, or maybe they couldn't see themselves abandoning the PNM, but they couldn't vote for the PNM because of what they were going on. So same 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And what Gary Griffith is talking about, and this is where I think, I went and looked it up, they have different codes, colors. There's red, yellow, green, and different levels. And then there's the last one, the blue one, which he's talking about. I think in all the other ones, in Interpol, it's like the person is on, you can't find them. So everybody has gotten the message. If you see A, B in any country under disguise or whatever, you need to arrest him because he's wanted, and usually it's crimes of organized crime, money laundering, terrorism, human trafficking, and so on. So if you go on the website, you will see it yourself. The only one where they don't involve the government, as you rightly said, and Gary Griffith said, is the one that's in the blue, which says either the government or some person. So I don't know if Dr. Rowley should have said, wonder what code was he held. Under the red, if it was the red, it would have to come from the government, from what I understand. Same thing for yellow and another color. But you can look it up, and yes, he's right about that. But I don't know how much credence I'm going to give it. And just lastly, on what you were saying, yes, I do think when it comes to the board appointments, it is a step backwards, for sure. It's really not right. But when it comes to dealing with the drugs, I think because this government has made some sort of a, agreement with the United States, in where most of the drugs either go to the United States or to Europe, I do think that there is a commitment, and I think partly you're seeing, as a result of that, a lot of uptick in crime, because you have to understand, if you are going into people's bread and butter, which is in billions of dollars, and you're disrupting their trade, which is what it is, you're disrupting their trade, which means that we in Trinidad and whoever else is involved are going to lose out. There is going to be some fight back on it. So I don't know if it is that is what is accounted for, but I do believe there is a commitment, until otherwise proven, that there is a commitment with our government to work with the United States, as you're seeing from recent drug holes in cocaine, not cannabis. I mean, cannabis is on the stock exchange in, what state is that? One of the very upscale states in the United States.
Colorado?
Colorado, yeah, and people opening up CBC things. So come on, please, stop telling us about it. As David Rudder said, we don't want to hear about the marijuana. We don't want to hear about the marijuana. We want to hear about the cocaine.
The thing is, from what I understand, the minister in Antigua, I can't remember the exact title that deals with, I think he's also the immigration minister, but his portfolio is wider than that. At least in one report, his words kind of implies that Dr. Rowley indirectly implies that Dr. Rowley is on a list. What it was reported to what phrases he used. Mm-hmm. But in another report, it basically, apparently he outright denied saying Dr. Rowley was on a list, right? Apparently, according to some reports, it's supposed to be on the red list.
Red list? No.
Yes.
Red list is a serious list.
Or people have that impression,
yeah,
right?
That is what they have. They have that impression. I don't think he's on a red list.
Now, Mr. San Fernando pointed out, basically, the mistaken identity scenario has been happening to him for years. Whereas everywhere he goes in the Caribbean, or everywhere he travels...
How about in Trinidad and the Pie Man?
Right? Mr. San Fernando said, it happens to him because someone has his exact same name and birth date. So Interpol will cause immigration officials to pull him off to the side. I don't know if that's what's happening to Dr. Rowley. But I think part of it is we kind of have to see more if we want to say, unless we're saying the commissioner of police or somebody is outright lying, which I'm not prepared to say. We need evidence of that one way or the other. It could just be a combination of errors. And ironically, because he is Dr. Keith Rowley, former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, what Mr. San Fernando has been going through for the last several years, if not decades, I think, couple of decades, Dr. Rowley might not have to go through again because of the the diplomatic and international incident it has become, because they even have in local papers the immigration minister from Antigua having to speak about it, and he is also claiming it didn't come from us. Nobody here put his name on any list or anything like that, and he can't say that Dr. Rowley's name is on a list to begin with. So I really don't want people to have absolutist positions on this when we lack evidence. I know even an editorial is more or less saying we need a better explanation, but my thing is, to what end? Why would you look to persecute Dr. Rowley in this manner? It would be so blatant. I don't think it's worth anything to the government to put him on a watch list. For what? Unless they have something to implicate him, right? In which case, they won't be running for cover to this extent now. And it's not like you could put him on a watch list and then hide the fact. It's not like he's never going to travel again. We have San Fernando on the line. I don't know if San Fernando wants to talk about this, but he could further explain his experiences again for those who didn't hear him yesterday. Good morning, caller. You're on the air. This is San Fernando. Good morning. Good morning, caller.
Hello.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm hearing you now. So can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you now.
Okay, all right. Now, let me say this about that issue with Dr. Rowley. Let me say this. You know, when you listen to what the commissioner of police said, no, they didn't say Dr. Rowley not on a list. No.
I think he did.
Said they did not. At least you have to listen. You have to listen. It's not how the commissioner chose his words. He said Trinidad and Tobago Police Service or nobody that section. They didn't do that. However, it stands to reason after Rowley may be on a list. That Dr. Rowley may be on a list of some kind, and that is worrying, because if it wasn't done by Trinidad and Tobago, then who else would do it? Had to be the US authorities that listening. And coming back to Karen's point about all those other issues that the US government don't put you on a list to be something gravely important to be put on a Interpol list, watch list. Whatever take or comment it on the list. So I think Dr. Rowley, Dr. Rowley needs to give us an answer. I think Dr. Rowley now needs to come out and be another press conference and tell us why he may be on a list. And I think I think the Commissioner of Police needs to come back and tell us, okay, you answer the question. You didn't put him on a list, but tell us if he is on a list, because they would have access to the information from Interpol as well. Have a good day, Sean and Karen.
Okay, so
hold on, Karen. I just want to say, according the media release from the TTPS says directly, comprehensive checks were conducted across Interpol secure databases, which yielded a definitive result. Dr. Rowley is not listed on any Interpol watch list or international notice. No alerts, flags, or warrants are associated with his name in Interpol systems. So it's not just, they didn't just say, we didn't do it. They are claiming, and this is what the report said, and this is the media release from their social media, that they checked everything in Interpol and he is not listed there.
Right, and maybe what the former Prime Minister could do is say what notice he's talking about, because The red notice is for wanted persons. I mean, you know where he lives. Yellow notice is for missing person, but he clearly is not. Blue notice is additional information, and you go down the road until you get silver notice, which identification and tracing of criminal assets. And then there's the Interpol UN Security Council special notice, where entities and individuals subject to UNSC sanctions. So the type of notice does make a difference, and I think you should say, because the red notice clearly, I mean, the implication is the red notice, and it definitely cannot be the red notice or the yellow notice. So maybe that will be helpful. Or is this, maybe we need to know more about that. But until the parties come forward, if they do, to clarify, I think we are at a standstill on that. But coming back to, unless we get a call, and this is very open to that. I do appreciate the responses and the contributions of the callers. So I was speaking about, just going through very quickly now, what kind of prescriptions. And one of the things is that persons have said, let us go back to the Shipwriters Agreement. And the Shipwriters Agreement was implemented under Mr. Pandey's time. And then now we have is the equivalent of that is SOFA, which I think is far more robust than the Shipwriters Agreement. And what the Shipwriters Agreement, it was fighting drugs. It was a fight against the drugs, and allowed U.S. any fund. You had to sign the agreement. You had to sign the agreement, and when you signed the agreement, you became a party. And once you became a party, which Trinidad did, what it would mean is if a suspicious boat, vessel, vast patrol vessel, of course having intelligence information at their disposal, the United States would have that. If they suspected that or they believed that, they had the right to follow and search and chase and board that boat, even if it was in Trinidad and Tobago's territorial waters. And there's a famous saying by Mr. Pandey, when people say, well, what about our sovereignty? He say, what sovereignty are you talking about? The country being run by the drug barons. You want them to continue to run the country? That's what he said. And that sovereignty talk kind of falls hollow when we still have the Privy Council as our final court of appeal. That is the judicial arm of our democracy. And I don't see many people wanting to let go of the Privy Council for whatever reason. So I think on an issue like this, they have not been able to solve the crime. They have not. You must be going on now 30 years. So if you're doing the same thing over and over again, but no difference in the results, you don't think it's time to try this? And I think that's the best chance we have. And I think that is what is worrying the persons involved in white-collar and organized crime, that it seems as though the United States is playing a part in the fight against disrupting that trade in a way that we alone could not do it. But if the United States has the intelligence and is given the go-ahead by our government to do what is necessary, I think people are running scared. That's what I think, and I think that's why you see an uptick on the crime, but I may be wrong. The other thing go ahead.
Sorry, we have San Fernando back, so I think he might be looking to comment further on the previous issue, or maybe on the Shipwright Agreement, because he has commented on similar maritime issues before. San Fernando, welcome back.
Yes, Sean. Morning again, and Karen.
Morning.
Now,
morning.
I want to clarify something. Dr. Rowley said he was on some list, right? Let me say this. The State Department of the United States of America also have a list. And that list is also connected to the Office of Foreign Asset Control. And this is something that I actually know about. So Dr. Rowley may not be on an Interpol list. However, he could be on a U.S. State Department list, which is more plausible when we look at all the things that Karen spoke about in that UN report. It may be possible that Dr. Rowley may be on a United States list rather than an Interpol list. That is what I call back to say.
And there might be merit in that. It is not, I mean, politicians know how to say and not to say. So you wouldn't be able to say that they didn't speak the truth. But at the same time, when you say they didn't speak the truth, there are things that they are not released, unless you find it out, and then you confront them with that. What I was looking at very quickly, if I could just say this, is one of the things is, as I was reading from that report from UNOC, they said a major issue in Trinidad is the firearms, and actually listed St. Lucia, Guyana, Jamaica, and gave the number of crimes that are committed, murders committed with unlicensed guns. For some reason, it didn't show Trinidad and Tobago's own. But what is very telling, and what is very good, this gun court, again, Hope had pushed for that, advocated for a firearms court. And the firearms court is really, as I had already spoken about it, but this, what I'm going to say now, puts more value to going after what they call a firearms court or gun court. It started many years ago in Jamaica because they really do have a problem with murders using unlicensed firearms being imported into their country. And so initially there were a lot of issues about the jurisdiction of the courts to deal with it, the severity of the sentence, and so there was a lot of pushback on it. But what I did find out is that from the Gleaner report and the reporting on the Chief Justice, who is now giving an account of the headway that they've made with the gun court, because one of the issues that they spoke about was that the gun court was supposed to clear up a lot of the backlog and was supposed to be able to, the high courts can function as a gun court, the different magistrates courts can function as a gun court, just as how the magistrates court in Trinidad is a summary court and a petty civil court, both civil and criminal jurisdiction. They had that law in place. So they had a lot of challenges. There's no question about that. But what came out of it is that the question came up is whether they have been successful. And it appears that they had a 30-something% deduction in the number of murders committed with the guns. And I'm looking for the article itself, because when the Chief Justice gave his account to the country as to the progress they had made, and they have almost cleared up their backlog by 70-something%. So we can learn from them, because what happens with a gun court is that once the burden of proof is on you to show how you came in possession of an unlicensed gun. And if you cannot give a good explanation, then automatically, no jury, just you and the judge, that's the evidence, you go into jail for many, 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 many years. And that has proven now in Jamaica to be very, very, very successful. I am looking to find the article. It was in the Gleaner, and it did show that they have made significant progress, and was reported this year in the report of the Chief Justice when accounting to the people of Jamaica. I'm looking for it. I can't seem to find it. I don't know why I can't find it. Anyway, maybe I have it here, because they have an article February 20. But the point is this: that's one of the solutions. We're dealing with not only the guns, we're dealing with the firearms. And now that they're saying that they've made significant progress in terms of that, this is something that we can implement. A gun court, give the DPP more the staff that he needs, not that what he wants, what he needs. Set up a serious fraud office, which was again something that came from Hope, and adapting the British model, and the gun court adapting the Jamaican model. So those are things that the government can put into their arsenal of weapons, the fighting what I consider to be the root of our crime, which is the drug trade in its manifestations: money laundering, organized crime, and murders, and the violence we see on the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. Well, go ahead.
No, we have to wrap up in our time, but we have a couple comments to get through too. So I actually want to take those last two comments that now came in, that we now saw in order. I want to address this one especially, but the comment afterwards is what also makes it ironic. I thought this was a call-in program. I didn't know it was an internal talk shop for Sean and Karen laughing out loud. Now, here's the thing. What this tells me is, and usually this is the case with criticisms, you don't watch the show, you don't watch the show enough. Because this show was never a call-in program. It has a call-in segment, But it was never a call-in program. In fact, when the show started, it didn't even have the call-in segment, right? So that's what that tells me. Now, if you do want to claim that you watch a lot of the show, and that is the conclusion you came to make a statement like that, then I would have to question your capacity to understand the show.
Gosh.
I just have to do, because we've never had more than a third of the show being the call-in segment. 2/3 of the show has always more or less been a talk shop with whoever, whether it's me alone, me and Karen, me and other co-hosts, me and guests. That's how it's always been. So, and usually when we have the harshest criticisms of the show, Karen, it's very obvious. The most likely reason is they don't actually watch the show. They're now tuning in, they have a faint idea of what they think the show is, but they don't actually watch the show. That's why in the past, I could have, and it's happened more than once, I could have complained about what the PNM said for 4 days straight. But the 5th day, I complained about one thing the UNC said, and all of a sudden, I'm a PNM apologist and a PNM supporter. I could complain about the UNC for 4 days straight and complain about PNM for 1 day, and all of a sudden, I am a PNMite and a UNC hater. I mean, a UNC supporter and a PNM hater, right? Because just because you see one snippet of the show doesn't mean that you know what the show is. That's because let's go to the next comment right after. Good morning, lovely topic. I want to know if when the new government comes, citizens have to wait so long for board members, right? And again, here's a comment that's basically saying, hey, I appreciate one of the topics that you all are talking about, right? I'm not entirely sure who have to wait so long for board member. Well, you see, it all depends on whatever the process is for selecting them. Some might argue some boards are taking too long. Some might argue some boards were selected too quickly. There's another comment to get through that came in earlier that we should take. And this is speaking to I believe one of the prisoners that was relocated with regards to hard labor. Now, a prisoner escaped, I think on some kind of program. I'm not sure if it's outside the prison. So hard labor is just one of those things. I'm not entirely sure about implementing it, in part because of it's not just have them work. It's also how are you going to have them work and work securely. And then you get into human rights and blah, 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 blah. And that's an ethical topic that I'm not really prepared to speak to this morning. I don't have a strong opinion of yes or no on the matter. It's not something that I've looked into. So I'll just leave that there. Last thing, I'll just say this. What Mr. Savannah said, as Karen said, it might be a correct point. U.S. intelligence knows things about our politicians that they probably don't even know that U.S. intelligence knows. They could rhetorically read the Russian mail. They could read our mail. They could read our government's mail, right? They already have at least one report where they have stated they believe senior government officials are involved in human trafficking. So they probably have files on all of our politicians, and they're analyzing based on our perceived corruption, levels of crime, potential government involvement in crime, and their potential deliberate poor governance when dealing with crime. So we do have one last call apparently to try and squeeze in. We'll take the call quick and then Karen can give a closing remarks and we'll close the show. Caller, good morning.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Karen.
Morning.
Morning.
I would have listened to Dr. Rowley, and I think he is not telling the entire story. I am feeling that he knows exactly what is happening. He's keeping it close, because I was a little bit surprised to hear the Antiguan politician saying he was unaware that Dr. Rowley was passing through Antigua, and he would have expected somebody as high profile as him, seeing that the cordial relationship they would have had over the past, to at least announce his passing through. The other thing I'm surprised about is that he said he would have contacted his other Caribbean counterparts to find out. I am thinking that he would have gone straight to Interpol to get some information. I mean, if your name is on the list and a high-profile person as you are, I don't think they would have had any problem giving you that. It's just another email to gain some relevance. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Well, so one newspaper interviewed the foreign affairs minister, and he made those comments. The other newspaper, and I got it a little wrong. I got it wrong. It was the Minister of Legal Affairs, Public Safety, and Labor. And he basically said, as far as he knows at least, I'm putting that disclaimer, what Dr. Early said that happened in Antigua was what happened. So at least that part is, according to one minister from Antigua, true. But as you said, Dr. Early may know more that he's not revealing.
I think that would be an accurate assumption to make. And that's why I think we need to wait and see how it pans out, because there's more in this, in the motor than the pestle. And, but, you know, thank you for the persons who call in. The only thing is, what we like, what we appreciate, and which all our callers do, whether we agree with them or not, is that they come with suggestions, a point of view on an issue. But, you know, and that is helpful to you, the person who's calling in, and to all the viewers and to us. So please feel free to call in at the appropriate time and share your point of view on an issue, whether you agree with us or not, and, you know, give us some, and it'll be helpful to all of us who watch WSN, which to me is one of the, I've said it before, and nobody's holding a gun to my head or making me say this, it is the, if they had to market this station, it is the station where persons, there's responsible journalism, absolutely. Fourth Estate is alive and well on WESN. And no, I'm not being paid. I do it because I love doing it. I love sharing, and I have a good professional relationship with everyone here. But most importantly, the ethos of this company, of WSN, is what we should see replicated in all other media houses.
Well, and I just like to you know, go to bat for Karen and say, not only do we not necessarily control anything that she says, but her decisions on her commentary and the responsible decisions she makes of what to say or not what to say, that is all due to her, right? In the sense that she volunteered not bringing her political career aspect and utilizing our show on our station as a means to advance that agenda. She comes in with topics of discussion that are pertinent to the country, and always is trying to think about what is important to the country and not about what's important to her, right? She did that on her own. Nobody had to ask her, hey, you know, we don't really want you to talk about your stuff here. No, she did that on her own. So part of WESN's culture, I guess you could say, has been built not just by management and staff, but also by the people like Karen, like Ashraf Ali, like others that we bring in to speak on our shows on a regular basis. You know, they bring that level of professionalism as well that we appreciate, and that's why we have certain people coming back more often than not, because we appreciate what they bring to the table.
And with that, have a good day.
With that said, thanks to the callers, because we did have callers on this show, just saying, it's not like we didn't have callers today, as well as thanks to all of the commenters, because hey, even things that might be perceived as negative comments gives us a chance to explain things, discuss things, you know, maybe get a little bit defensive, but hopefully I wasn't disrespectful too much. I did get close, if not crossed. I'll leave it there, right? I think I responded relatively appropriately based on the context of the comment that I was responding to. Now,
have a good day.
It was not meant to put down the person. I did actually mean that in a very literal sense in order to be constructive with regards to what I said, not meant as an insult. That said, comment again, call in again. And if you disagree with what I said, I have no issue continuing the conversation, but it'll have to be at another time because we are way over time. So, folks, have a good day. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Always remember, it's nice to be nice, even if you don't necessarily like the TV host who's speaking on the television right now. And never forget, Stay safe, as I always say. We'll see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private healthcare affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of